Everyone, thanks for joining us for today's AVST Live webinar. Today our topic is Skype for Business. Neil Butler, our Director of Sales Engineering, will be presenting. But before Neil gets us going, just want to draw your attention to a couple of things. Neil, can you advance the slide to the upcoming webinars? Yeah, so want to let you know we have a couple of webinars coming up in January and February, and we will include a link to how you can sign up for those if you're interested in the follow-up email. Once the webinar concludes, we'll also include a link to the slides as well as the recording for this. And want to also let you know real quickly, we're going to be giving away some Plantronics headphones after the webinar today. So if you're one of the lucky winners, look for an email from me with that great news just in time for Christmas. And lastly, you can download the slides in the handouts area if you're interested in getting those in advance of the follow-up email. And then we will also have time for Q&A at the end. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Neil.
Hi, thank you, and welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Today's subject, Skype, always draws a lot of attendance because it's certainly something that's active out in the market and in a lot of people's minds. So I sort of start this one off by letting you know, a lot of people who even are on these webinars really haven't had that much experience with us, and they might be wondering, who are we to be talking about Skype? And we feel pretty comfortable about this, actually. We start with some pretty good credentials in terms of being in unified communications. Been around since the early 80s. Many people using our product, even though a lot of them don't know it. It sits back in the server room or the phone room, and a lot of people have our product, love it, and don't really know who we are. But we've been around a long time. We're recognized as a best-of-breed provider by all of the consultants. And if you look at where we are in the market, who buys our solutions, they do it for a number of reasons. One of the things is our product has been growing over the years, and it has kept all of the mission-critical legacy applications. And many people in our market don't have those any longer. And they're shocked to find when they buy a new system that all those things they were using that they just assumed would still be there are now missing. So we're sort of known as the great company to replace a legacy system with, because you'll get all the access to the new features, the kind of things we talk about today, but also you won't be missing any of the rest of those. And that lets people leverage some of their environment. Not everyone is ready to make a major change in their PBX fabric, but they have to sometimes replace their call processing piece, and that's an excellent area for us. But along with having all those legacy features, we are also a leader in terms of solutions being deployed. We were the first out on the market with unified messaging. We were one of the first with a personal assistant, a kind of find me, follow me application. Very powerful speech-enabled solutions. For us, those are over 10 years old. We've just been in these markets for a long time. So people also come to us when they're looking. In particular, people who are hearing from other competitors that the only way to get some of these new UC features is a complete rip and replace of everything they own. And our story is different. We'll work with whatever you have. We're perfectly happy to deploy any of our solutions with even the oldest PBX and groupware kind of platforms. And we're really known for our interoperability. But at the same time, you can be very comfortable moving to us that when the time does come to move ahead, this product, if you've just installed it, it will move right along with you. We aren't owned by any particular PBX manufacturer or network company, so it really is our goal to make sure our products work in every environment. And that certainly includes any type of environment. It also includes deployment types like cloud and hybrid cloud and still enterprise as well. The kind of solutions we offer are important in today's webinar as well, because there are a lot of things that we do. We're not just a voicemail company. We started out as a voicemail company. We added unified messaging. We added a lot of very powerful call processing. That was sort of our forte in the early days. But we've also focused on other solutions. We fully realize that no matter how well you take a voice message, wouldn't it have been better if instead you connected the call that first time through? Very low percentage of calls get connected coming into the enterprise because people are very mobile. And mobility might be out of the building, or it just might be out of their office. So we spend a lot of time and R&D dollars on call completion. how can we get that call to that person? And this webinar won't really talk about too much of that, but that's another webinar that's worth looking at, because we can increase your first time call completion, and that really translates to dollars. And then also there's a lot of areas that we work in having to do with communications as it relates to other things in the enterprise. So if you think about, we have an informal call center product that we just have one slide on we'll talk about today. We have a set of tools for creating information access type applications. We have a web services API that lets your other applications and servers take advantage of the functionality we have on our platform. So it's a very wide-ranging solution set, and these webinars are great because we keep them short enough that people will come to them. But at the same time, keep in mind you'll probably get other invitations, and there's probably other things in the product line that you'd be interested in. When we talk about interoperability, we really are serious about it. Maintaining connections to all the types of PBXs and switching fabrics in the market, and all the groupware packages, and all the connections to the other devices and technologies that are out there, that's a serious part of the cost of releasing a new version of software. It isn't just that we put a new feature in it, we really have to test everything. And we have a very, very nice lab with hundreds and hundreds of virtual servers in it, and we literally go through regression testing in almost all the things you see up here every time we do a version of software. So that's kind of the general reason why we're comfortable talking about this next piece, which is Skype for Business. Now, Skype for Business, of course, has had many names over the years, and we've been dealing with it since the OCS days, Office Communication Server days. And between Office Communication Server and as they became Link, it became interesting to us that there actually was a kind of a swelling of people interested in using the Skype product or the Link product at the time for their communications fabric, for their telephone system. And the features weren't all that strong, but Microsoft was putting more and more features in every release. But what we noticed was the way it was implemented, it had to use Exchange as the call processing system. And we competed with Exchange out in the traditional TDM market, and we won almost every time because it just wasn't a very powerful platform. It wasn't focused on replacing the kind of things that were already in a business. So we were very, very successful at making sure that our products went in place of Exchange And when we saw this push to Link, we went to Microsoft and said, you know, you're going to have challenges pushing Link into the field because there are things that, when it's tied to Exchange they're going to be showstoppers for you. And we know what they are because we use those, frankly, to take business away from you in that area. And they just really weren't interested. They felt what they were offering, people would change and find what they were offering to be sufficient. And we went on our separate ways, and about a year and a half later, they came to us at a trade show and said they had millions and millions of dollars of business that they could not bring in because of these exact issues. And they were basically now a little more interested. So we worked with them, and we started developing a plan where when their VARs and dealers ran into these issues, they would get referred to us. And it never got as far as we'd like it to have gotten. They still send us business all the time. We are still the only solution that can help out in those circumstances. But officially, there's been so much change in the Skype for Business product line and management team that we really haven't gotten as far along as we'd like. That being said, we've been now deploying this for several years, and we're very, very comfortable with what's going on out in the Skype for Business market. And as we go out and talk to customers, and remember we have a sales force and a dealer channel sales force where there's hundreds and hundreds of people out there, and what they find is there's a fairly small percentage that have no interest in Microsoft at all. There's a much wider percentage that are looking at it, evaluating it, and some sort of plan in place to maybe run a trial or test it. And then there's kind of a group in the middle that actually they're going to it, they're comfortable with it, and they're moving straight ahead. But for us, what that means is there's an incredible opportunity out here. So we work very hard in that area. And part of that, of course, is not just knowing our side, but knowing the network side. So we maintain the certifications that we feel we need for the competency that we want to offer our customers. And that's gold competency in both messaging and communications. So both the Skype side and the Exchange side, so to speak. And this is a very limited group of people who have actually maintained both of those. And that's because they're very, very different, but our product sits right between those two worlds. So we're very comfortable in our ability to sit down and talk to people about what's going on in that world and how we can play. And the key to our success is back several years ago, we were actually able to find ways where we could start putting our product into a link originally and then a Skype for Business deployment to do various things. And there's a lot of things that we could offer, and most of these had to do with solving solutions that weren't solved by the pure Microsoft solution. And we're going to go through a couple of these areas, because if you're looking at deploying Skype, these are things that either you're probably already familiar with, or you might want to make sure that you become familiar with before you go all the way down the road with Skype. We're very interested in the Skype deployments. They do a lot of really fantastic things, but like we said, we are aware of some areas where our product certainly smooths out that process. And it's only us. You can either use Exchange to provide the call processing and messaging, voice messaging services in a Skype deployment, or you can use us. No one else has figured out how to do it, and that's one of the reasons why Microsoft actually steers this business. And the way we do this is not only fully functional, but it's very nice in that it only uses native features on Skype. There's no software to install on a Skype server. There's nothing special that you need. You basically use what they call trusted application services on theirs to create a special kind of SIP RTP trunk, and we connect to that. And at that point, we really look pretty much like a traditional UC product behind a PBX. So calls come in from the PSTN, however they come in, direct SIP trunks through a border controller, through a gateway, really makes no difference to us. Those calls can go and ring a Skype phone. If that caller doesn't answer, those calls forward to us. We have all the information we need because of that trusted application to put that into the user's voicemail, or to take all of the other actions that we can do in the way of call completion. Likewise, you can program those trunks to come in straight to our system and have a much more powerful front end than Exchange gives you in terms of automated attendant, speech automated attendant, call routing, all of that. So this is why we're able to sit down and talk with customers and offer solutions. And as people move to these solutions, they typically don't kind of forklift their whole enterprise. In most of these cases, it starts out as perhaps a new building opens up and they decide to start that with Skype, or they convert one of their existing facilities or an existing department, and then they slowly migrate through. There's a big change in going from the traditional environment to Skype. A lot of benefits, but a lot of work. So most customers want to take it a little bit at a time. And that's one of the great things about our system, is you can go into your environment, replace all your legacy platforms with our platform, and then start deploying the Skype pieces one at a time. They'll still all be connected together. We can take a single CX system and support all of your legacy environments, plus your Skype departments. And as you start moving users from Skype, or from a traditional setup over to Skype, from our point of view, it's just literally one drop down that says, okay, now I'm connected over here. So it makes migration and centralization much easier. And it lets you start right now by deploying all your old legacy, or getting rid of and upgrading all your old legacy platforms without a product that you have to get rid of later when you go to Skype. So it's a pretty popular thing to do. Now, people ask us quite frequently early on, why would we consider your product instead of the Exchange that already comes with Skype? We hear all the time, with an E05 or an E5 license, I get voicemail for free, which isn't quite true. There's still servers and issues like that, but there are generally things of interest to people that they're going to struggle with in the Exchange environment that we're going to offer a solution to. And by far the biggest one has to do with compliance and confidentiality. There are many, many users, many enterprises who are not comfortable with storing their voice messages in the Exchange message store. And there are legal issues, there are confidentiality issues. HIPAA is a big piece of that. Sarbanes-Oxley, the laws that are in place on, what you have to do for anything that's in your email server in terms of storing them and making them available for discovery. A lot of people feel they're not willing to do that. And that's a showstopper for Exchange for UM. Exchange for UM has one message store, and that's Exchange for UM. Whereas we can go in and replace, not Exchange, because Exchange is still the powerful core text messaging system, but we can replace the UM side of it. Our server will work with an Exchange server just like the Exchange UM server does. The difference is, while we can store messages in Exchange, we do all the same things the Exchange server does. As an option on a per user basis, you can have messages not stored in Exchange. They stay on our server. You can still access them from secure clients, and we'll look at those as we move forward here. But that ability to have separate message stores is extremely important. We do a lot of business with anybody that's looking at Skype in healthcare, for example, where what they really would like is for their management team, their operational team, their IT people, they would like to have messages stored in Exchange. It's a great convenience for day-to-day work. But for people out on the floor, for people who are going to have messages that have patient information in them, from a confidentiality point of view, from a HIPAA point of view, they just can't have those messages in Exchange. HIPAA just does not like the fact that those messages can get out too easily. So for those users, on our system, they can go ahead and use our message store. And we have all the tools to still make that very productive. So that's probably the number one piece that we see when we're talking about Skype customers. And that's the main piece where Microsoft, when they stumble across this, when they have a customer that gives them pushback, that's when they'll have their VAR get in touch with us. And we'll come in as kind of a joint proposal to make sure the customer gets everything they need, everything they feel safe with. On the voice messaging side, remember, we've been around since the early 80s, so not only can we do this message store piece, but whatever they are using in voice messaging today on the legacy system before they move to Skype, well, we do all that. We've been around for longer than anybody in terms of a product that's been on the market, and we have all of those legacy features. And one of the most important ones turns out to be our ability to emulate the other telephone user interfaces. We have alternate telephone user interfaces on our system, so if a customer is moving from, let's say, an Octal Aria over, even though they're going to use our system, we can set it up such that the prompting and the keystrokes for the users is just like the Aria. There's a few small pieces that are different for setting up mailbox options, but all the messaging functionality is the same, and that means a minimum disruption to business. So that's something else that's really popular for people when they look at replacing their legacy system and going to Skype. They really don't want to have to learn a new interface, and with Exchange UM, you have to learn a new interface. There's no emulations there. There's so much concern about security that when we talk about kind of how we do this, there are pieces we do that make users happy beyond just the message store. Let's say you decide even to use our messages, or let's say you decide to put your messages in Exchange. So somebody comes in, somebody sends you and marks you a message as private, so it can't be forwarded. Now in the voice world, you pick up the phone and listen to that message and try and forward it, it'll say no. But if I store that message in Exchange, even though when we move it to Exchange, we carry that private flag forward, Exchange won't honor that flag. They'll say, yeah, it's a private message. They'll show that, but then they'll let any user forward it anyway. And that's a major concern for people. So what we can do is we can set those systems up such that when that user gets, even though their messages are stored in Exchange, when they get a private message, we will put an email into Exchange, but it'll just have the text, you've received a private message, please call in to retrieve that message over the telephone, and then I'll have a copy of the telephone number. So we extend that security as well. We do that same kind of secure approach on both our web and mobile clients. So let's say I'm leaving my messages on the CX server, I'm still concerned about security. So when I go to a web client, I can get my messages. I can play them over the phone, I can play them over the PC speakers, but I'm streaming them. So what happens is the user can't go file, attachment, save. There's no cache copy, so those messages don't get out. Same with our mobile devices. You can get to your messages when they're stored on CX from your mobile device, and you open up the list. There's my message list, but actually there's no messages on the device yet. I open up a particular message. I'm looking at the information about that message. Still no message on the device. I press play. Across the mobile data network, we move that message and we play it for the user, and then they can forward it, delete it, whatever they want to do. When they back up to the message list screen again, the copy of that message that was just played is deleted. There's never anything stored on the phones. So our security level, even when you're leaving the messages on our side, is extremely high. Another feature where people find the Exchange server somewhat lacking is the automated attendant. Now, to be fair, we've been doing automated attendant for like 27 years, I think now. I guess it's natural that we'd have many, many more features than a relative newcomer like Exchange But one of their big problems isn't just the features that are missing, but it's the architecture they use. It makes it very difficult to deploy Exchange when you have multiple locations that have different needs, multiple time zones, and when you need that flexibility, which is what the large enterprise faces. A large enterprise, they rolled their Exchange together from their 10 sites 5 years ago, and they're just now looking at kind of centralizing on Skype for their telephony infrastructure, but that doesn't mean they don't have different needs out at each one of those different sites. And you'll find our product is flexible enough to handle whatever you want to do. It's pre-programmed holidays, unlimited menu times, all of that. And then there are things within the speech automated attendant that are problematic as well. Very limited alias names, very limited disambiguation. Both of those are a problem in a large enterprise when you start using speech automated attendant. And then the number of things they can do in their menus is very limited. Basically, transfer or go to another menu. So you're going to take somebody who's on let's say an Octel that they've had for 20 years, and they have voice processes threaded through that machine with menus and various kinds of recordings going to special departments and things like that. And suddenly they look at the Exchange server and they simply can't have any of that functionality. And now they're scrambling to buy a third-party product to do it, and it gets very messy. It's just much easier to let us be the core system there because we can do all of that functionality. One of the things that we came across very early on was we have we've been involved, we're the largest system out there right now, so when you get a big company with 10 locations and they're going to end up with 40,000 users, they're very likely, if they're just replacing a legacy call processing system, to use us. And we do things in that area that make that sensible, an easy way to go. For instance, while we have both dial by number, so look up the, spell the name, and we have a speech rec automated attendant, we also have the ability to partition that down. So if I have systems in New York and Chicago, and someone calls in and says John Smith into the speech automated attendant, most likely you only want to look at the John Smiths in that site, because that you just don't want to do those kind of cross transfers. And that's something that very few systems can do. And it's just a regular feature that we create departments based on groups, and whether that's for locations or actually department transfers, all of that's available. And that makes it much easier to deploy our system. So the bigger and more complex the enterprise, the more that we're going to be the correct product fit. We talked about call completion. Call completion is really, the challenge in call completion is really mobility. If you're sitting at your desk, transferring a call to you is pretty straightforward. There's still some things that we can do, like if you're at your desk and you're on a webinar, and that webinar is on your calendar, well, you probably don't want to take that phone call. You might want to have it go straight to voicemail. And you might want us to build a custom greeting on the fly saying, so I'm sorry, Neil Butler is in a meeting, he'll be available at 1 p.m. Or you might want a silent pop-up on your mobile device telling you who's calling, so you can look at that and say, oh, I've got to get off this webinar and take that call. Or you can hit a button and the caller will hear, Neil Butler is unavailable to take your call, but we'll call you back in 30 minutes. So silent call screening. All of those features are part of what our mobility client offers. And we do this without requiring much from the user, because over the years we've learned the users won't do much. So what we use is called context. Context says, let's read other things in the enterprise and increase the call completion by using that information. So the most typical one is the calendar. We can read your calendar and we'll actually route your calls differently based on what the Exchange calendar says. We can read your Skype presence and change how we route calls or what greeting we play to callers based on that. And we can read your physical location. And we don't actually have the ability to know where you are, but the user can define certain locations they want to use. And when a call comes in, it says, I'm going to send the call to their desk, and if they don't answer, I'm going to send it to their mobile phone. But we actually have the ability to say, well, before I ring the desk, I can ping their device and see if they're actually in the office. And if they're not, it goes straight to the mobile phone. And from a client point of view, we not only have a traditional telephone, if you have a Skype phone on your desk, that's one of the devices we can put in those lists. Your mobile phone on the telephone side can be there, and your Skype clients can be there. So we can build rules that change what devices we use, how we send calls, and that is going to increase call completion. And with all of the other security pieces, that really puts us in a unique place, particularly for supporting mobile workers. The other thing we do for call completion is we've got a kind of a unique product. It's really not a contact center. If you're moving to Skype and you have an existing contact center, a true ACD type, maybe a multimedia contact center, you're going to have to find a product to do that because Skype doesn't do that. Some people say they'll use response groups. Response groups are interesting, but they really don't do most of what people really want. And some smaller ends might be filled with a hunt group or response groups, but in the middle, for those medium-sized groups that are what we call knowledge workers. In other words, they're not just taking phone calls. People like an IT help desk or a sales order desk, things like that, inside sales desk. We have a unique product. And what that product does is interact with the callers, and it basically asks them questions, and based on their answers, it puts a call up on a screen in front of all the agents. It says, here's an incoming call. It's from Bob Smith. He has software version 7, and he is looking at an upgrade. And now the people, all of the agents monitoring that screen, can use a skills-based routing pull model to take the correct calls. So it's similar to response groups, but much, much more powerful. So with all those features, what we find is for most people who are looking at a Skype deployment, it's probably worth their time to talk to one of our people, one of our dealers, to look at, the kinds of things we think you at least should know about that might be problematic. And if they are, we can show you how you can use our product to make that Skype deployment much more successful. It will be a major event in the enterprise to move to Skype. It's a lot of things change, a lot of new things that are going to be great, but it'd be nice if you can kind of minimize the disruption of that. And we're pretty comfortable that our product will do that. And now we'll see if we have any questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Neil. We do have a few questions coming in. If you're interested in submitting a question and you haven't already, use the orange arrow in the upper corner. If you've got the pane is probably minimized, and then you should see the question box toward the bottom. So Neil, first question, is there a message notification via SMS for new voicemails?
So while we don't do you can do true SMS. SMS is a tricky question. Yes, if you want to get an SMS service, then we can do true SMS notification. What probably works easier is to use the SMS network's capability to accept an SMTP, traditional email message, and then they send it out. So something like my phone number at tmobile.com will actually do the same thing. But either way, pure, true SMS or converted SMS, or just email to anything you want, all of that is message notification aware.
Okay. Thanks, Neil. Next question. When you say trunks to AVST, are the trunks terminating to the AVST system or terminating to Skype and routing to AVST?
The trunks definitely go through Skype. In all cases, we sit behind the switching fabric, whether that's a traditional PBX or Skype. And that's what gives us our ability to be inside. As long as we're a trusted app, we have access to all the information to move calls around and do chain call forwarding and all those things that are really important with call routing.
Okay, next, can the CXE solution operate in a virtual environment with software licensing?
Yes. So we have two kinds of software licensing. One of them is a physical dongle that's sort of a holdover from our older versions, and people use that if they want to put CX somewhere on the network where it has no visibility to the internet. However, if you want to virtualize it in particular, while you can use a dongle that's awkward, we also have a software-based licensing feature that does an occasional peek out to the network to make sure the license is still valid. That's typically what gets used in virtual environments. And we support the product both on VMware and on Hyper-V.
Okay, another question. Can it integrate with ShoreTel and Skype for Business? And what does this require?
And one of the great things about the product, because we built it for this large, complex, multi-site enterprise, is you can hook a single CX system up to 10 different types of phone systems. That's not 10 phone systems, that's 10 types. So you could have 5 communications managers, 6 ShoreTel, 2 or 3 NECs, a couple of Ciscos, all those can be hooked together. And how you would do that is you would build a SIP trunk connection to the ShoreTel, and we have you'd buy that integration and buy 12 ports or 12 channels, and then you would build the Trusted App SIP to Skype, and that would all be on a single system.
Okay. Thanks, Neil. I'm just doing a quick scroll through the questions, and it looks like we got to, looks like we got all of them here. So we always do have our reps here follow up with those who attended and those who especially asked questions, just to make sure that your question was answered appropriately and whether or not there are any follow-on questions. And so in addition, of course, if you want to review the content, we'll make those slides available as well as the recording. So look for the follow-up email from us later today, and that will also include a link to our upcoming webinars in case you're interested in joining us again next year, which we hope that you will. Just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. And Neil, thanks very much for presenting. And I'll let you close us up as well.
Well, thank you. Once again, we really do appreciate you taking the time to come to these. We do them for you. Hopefully the information is useful. If it's not, make sure and let us know. You can always contact us at info@avst.com. Perhaps there's a subject we haven't covered you'd be interested in, and we're happy to look at doing that as well. So thanks, everybody.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.